Season 7 has been the most balanced season of Friendship is Magic, but in that cable news variety of giving equal time to hot garbage as it does to things that deserve our time. Last year had such few genuine duds to fill my worst episodes list that I had to cheat by adding a musical clip show and a Starlight episode, which I promised myself I wouldn't watch when the season began. This season, however, no such shortage. In fact, previous seasons offering up genuinely horrid excuses for episodes like Newbie Dash and Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep have made it so that I don't feel comfortable adding the usual paddling pool of fan pandering and dull mediocrity to the worst of list. So I'd like to introduce a third category, the top 5 blandest episodes of Season 7, dedicated to the episodes that put in no effort, copied fan headcanons for brony points, and made passing nods to their own lore for easy cheers. Because it just doesn't feel right putting these mediocre episodes alongside the worst of the worst, for the same reason that if I were ranking fanfiction stories, I wouldn't feel right putting the Human in Equestria wish fulfillment next to the snuff stories, diaper fetishists, and literal child pornography. Did you know I'm automatically biased against Starlight episodes? I didn't, but maybe that's because I possess more than one brain cell and am capable of comprehending nuance. But let me blow the minds of the glue-huffing simpletons who called me a needless contrarian by putting a Starlight episode in the top 5. All Bottled Up did exactly what I wanted a Starlight episode to do, make Starlight go through any real kind of suffering, and they delivered that in the form of passive-aggressive and spiteful shenanigans from a delightfully oblivious dolt. Also, seeing Starlight bottle up her anger only for the anger to get worse because the problems causing the anger continue to go unaddressed is both cathartic and the first good lesson Starlight's ever been involved with. As it turns out, if you don't talk to people about the things that were bugging you, they continue to bug you because people can't read minds. So quit being a stubborn and melodramatic little brat and open your fucking mouth. And if you refuse to open your mouth, then you have nobody to blame but yourself, and no amount of needless excuses is going to change that. Are you paying attention, entire analysis community? Probably not. In previous episodes, I've characterized episodes that don't move anything forward as the biggest crime a writer can commit, and Hasbro responded by writing horrific garbage like Newbie Dash. So I've been rather lukewarm on the old school shittiness that is characters pacing back and forth and doing nothing of value. This wasn't meant to be interpreted as a challenge, but Hasbro took it as one anyway to spend 20 minutes with Twilight agonizing over where to send her student, only for them to yell, "Psych!" at the very end. With the possible exception of Princess Celestia being sarcastic, there's nothing in Celestial advice to truly stimulate other than the ideas it presents for fanfics. In fact, just watching it is a net loss because you still have to expend the energy to press play, so it's not just boring, it's ego-unfriendly. You know, Hasbro, admitting that you watch my work was not a wise decision on your part, because now I'm never going to stop crushing your new favorite baby's head into the dirt. But making an entire episode based around sniping at a combination of minutiae nitpicks, old criticisms that are no longer valid because you fixed the problem years ago, and thought-terminating cliches to not be critical of your writing revealed just how bitter you are. I've been on the writers' asses for their pride in this season, but they weren't supposed to display how right I was to be on their asses. They were supposed to get better. You may be entitled to your opinion, but your opinions are a reflection on your expertise on a given subject. If you have no expertise, then your opinions are worthless. Oh, that's good. I gotta write that down. Anyway, Honest Apple is a textbook lesson in this. Applejack spends most of the episode rampaging around like a child on too many pixie sticks and has to get a severe dressing down from Rarity about the difference between the job she was asked to do and the job she ended up doing. She was asked to provide a more practical insight, not pretend she knew enough about fashion to start spitting venom at the entire industry. But even when Applejack tried to pull the "but it's my opinion" argument like an internet conservative facing slight opposition, Rarity dragged her to what is now my new favorite pony to spit that right back in her face. I want to go to BronyCon just to rub this episode into the faces of a few very specific people. Daring Done was the best Daring Do episode Friendship is Magic has ever had, but that's only because the bar was set so fucking low that Sketchy would be recording it in his booty backlog. I like how the title is phrased as a question because we all know that AK Yearling comes out of retirement at the end, so it's another episode that fucking teases you with the status quo. Oh no, Rainbow might have to find a new thing to obsess over. Nah, just yanking your chain, you're not getting that half hour back, sucker. You know, Hasbro, it's probably not a good idea to taunt people when you've already demonstrated how easily provoked you are. An episode about Pinky and Maud sounds great. An episode where Pinky keeps trying to ship Maud with worst pony is officially my new definition of hell. There are a lot of things to hate about Rock Solid Friendship, but they all come back to one critical failure. Pinkie Pie is the worst character in an episode that has Starlight Glimmer in it. How'd you even do that? You know, Hasbro, you really try my patience sometimes. During Season 6, I just accepted that Starlight was going to be an irregular occurrence and opted not to indulge in her episodes. But it seems that wasn't good enough for you, so you decided to shove her right in my face for half of Season 7 and nailing her to so many potentially good ideas that her screaming has made her incapable of forming coherent sentences. We know you're very proud of this worthless piece of garbage, but your public masturbation has gotten extremely out of hand. Sorry. Would 20 minutes of flurry heart battling at the camera help you stomach our distasteful attitude? Yes. You fucking pricks. Hey guys, let's redo the cutie map and swap out Starlight for a small child with a Starlight complex. Actually, no, let's not do that. That sounds really dull. Marks and Recreation managed the impossible by retreading the old ground of cutie marks are bad. No, they're not. Okay. But that's not the end of it. It's also another bloom and gloom where the central conflict is, what if I get a cutie mark that I don't like? But packaged into a less sympathetic character. Is anyone else getting really sick of the CMC's cutie mark plot yet? I kind of thought that after they got their cutie marks, we'd be seeing them do new stuff, not just the old stuff with shittier characters. What would you get if you took a ContraPoints video, stripped out all the sexual innuendo and salient points, and filled the empty spaces with brainless and banal both sides rhetoric? Well, you'd get Incros, but you'd also get To Change a Changeling, an episode that made the attempt to deliver an important lesson about security being a necessity in daily life, but chose the most embarrassingly edgy man-child pretending that people's emotions are trivial bullshit to deliver that lesson. I mentioned in the In a Minute that this entire episode feels like half the writers are trying to talk about something important, while the other half are placating the emotionally stunted crybabies who thought the Changeling's new designs weren't surus enough for their delicate sensibilities. A minor saving grace for brilliantly touching on the concept of gender fluidity, but that kind of goodwill doesn't get you very far when this malignant tumor makes yet another terrible decision that only works out entirely on the basis of sheer luck. Would somebody just straitjacket this lunatic already? The best episodes in Friendship is Magic are the ones where Fluttershy has to smack a bitch, and here she smacks about 9 bitches at the same time for a bitch slap barbecue. And now I've said the word bitch so many times that it sounds like Porky Pig talking about a mild skin irritation. Fluttershy leans in, draws on the Flutterbrudder and It Ain't Easy Being Breezy's formula, where Fluttershy is forced to apply her assertiveness lessons for the benefit of another person, but with the added flavor of having to assert that she knows best in her area of expertise amidst the sea of Dunning-Kruger apparent assholes. Fluttershy continues to be one of the best characters in the show, especially when she's showing the big dingus what's good. What would you get if you took Cadance and Shining Armor, scrubbed out all the funny and interesting things that have been done with them over the last 5 years, and packaged that as an entire episode? You'd get the perfect pair. An exceptionally sanitized version of love stories that has zero chance of building on the interesting ideas it presents, because the characters are repeatedly established as being dead. A relationship that shows you only the perfect moments and deliberately omits all the bumps in the road to present a sanitized idea of relationships. A dull introduction for characters we cannot explore any further, getting by entirely on dem feels. The only truly redeeming value it has is that it retroactively reveals how brainless and knee-jerk all the criticisms of Cadance and Shining Armor have been over the years, because they just told their story again with more soulmate cliches and was lauded as the best episode ever. Normally you have to factor in personal taste, but if you think The Perfect Pair is the best episode of the series, then you are a boring person. Hey kids, if your parents are constantly invading your privacy and don't understand proper boundaries, you should just suck it up and deal with it. Now, can you find the extremely fucked up implication of that sentence? Hasbro clearly couldn't. This is the second time that Rainbow Dash has been completely 100% in the right, and the episode treats it like she's the one who has to learn something. Only instead of childish hazing and bullying, it's her invasive and embarrassing parents that she has to learn to put up with. How many more instances of clear and obvious abuse are you gonna put this poor woman through, Hasbro? Did you guys play Lisa and get its themes completely backwards? I've always talked about how lore is the biggest and most unnecessary pain in the ass in Friendship is Magic, but that's only when lore is used to make bronies cheer rather than actually rich in the story. A Health of Information combines an old pony legend with Fluttershy braving the deepest forests of Equestria to find a cure for a new illness that's fated Zecora. It's Fluttershy leans in, but with higher stakes and new material for Fluttershy, and her exploiting old legends to go on her own mini-adventure, coupled with a wonderful and important lesson about the importance of self-care and the dangers of always putting others before yourself that doesn't intrude on the values of helping your friends. Showcasing the best of Fluttershy's post-Season 5 design, she proves to be hardworking, dedicated, and extremely resourceful, and puts all of her previous lessons to use in what would have honestly been an extremely fitting end to the season, but is perfectly adequate not only being the best episode of Season 7, but the best episode starring Fluttershy, period. Are you a well-adjusted person who doesn't define themselves by their fandoms? Well, then you might as well skip a royal problem because the episode is fanfic fuel, half-assed backstories, and vague questions masquerading as intrigue. Hasbro came in using evil Celestia designs, the Dream Realm, and the tease of developing the princesses like a set of keys being jangled in front of a baby's face. Everything in here is way too complicated for most children, and for most older viewers contains little to stimulate. If you like good storytelling, your time is being wasted by this episode, and if you're the kind of person who's big into the lore and minutia to create a sandbox for fan works, then you're probably not watching a top 5 video made by that polarizing slut. The fact that Daybreaker comes from Starlight's mind and not Celestia's highlights how much of a waste of time this episode is. Nothing happens, nothing's achieved, the audience gets the animated equivalent of a Michael Bay movie, and the writers get applause for doing no actual work. If you want a cynical Frankenstein's monster of every bad decision made by Friendship is Magic, look no further than Shadowplay, an episode that combines lore and backstory obsessions, fan-favorite bit characters making their debut, snapshot redemptions, and everyone holding the idiot ball so that Starlight could be the one to save the day. They even chucked in the Dazzlings because that was the only piece of goodwill Hasbro hasn't worn down to the bone. It's a full solid hour of Hasbro throwing out half-baked ideas that the fandom has spent the last few years obsessing over, with the full knowledge that they won't have to put in any real effort into it because the bronies will lap up table scraps and call it steak if there's even the chance of it validating their headcanons. It's wasting the season finale on more bland garbage whose quality is irrelevant because continuity. It's a royal problem, but longer and with the arrogance of pretending to be a major season closing event, with the added pus-filled boil of let's just bring in Star Swirl because those idiots will eat this shit up. It's so equally weak and patronizing that I wouldn't have been surprised if it opened with a joke about needing a flame shield, and one of the pillars actually has a flame shield. It's a fitting end for a season rife with pride, laziness, and Starlight humping, but ironic in its blatant fan service toward the very same people it spent most of Fame and Misfortune complaining about. I am honestly surprised that these same people managed to stay on the same single thought long enough to make an entire movie.